Oh, yes. Crash and burn. Pat Travers on your community radio station, KFUG Crescent City, 101.1 on your FM radio dial, worldwide on the internet, kfugradio.org. It is 10 minutes past the top of the hour. That hour here on the north coast of California is 11 a.m. It is September 30th, and it certainly does feel like it might be crashing and burning. But of course, we can stop that from happening if we want to. So I am very, very pleased to have a room full of guests and participants today on Public Process because we have an important topic to discuss. And that's the topic of free speech. What is it? Who gets to decide what it is? Who gets to decide what the limits are? And what role does local media, particularly a local community radio station, have to play in that entire discussion and debate? We're going to want to hear from you as well today. 707-460-6100. That is the KFUG live listener line. We're joined in the studio by Paul Critz. Paul, good morning.
Good morning, Mike.
Jessica Cejnar of Wild Rivers Outpost.
Hello.
Hi, thanks for being here. And Avi Critz as well. Thank you.
KFUG Community News.
KFUG Community News. That is right. Okay, so a number of things came up. I guess last week would be a good way to begin to have this discussion about free speech and who decides what that is. And I think in some ways, perhaps for both of us, Paul, it started with this sign that we found in the KFUG studio.
So, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut in on you.
No, please.
So often, these big questions come up and, when you're busy looking at other things. So Tuesday night, I come in to do Night Soil at 8 o'clock, and I've been looking forward all day. I'm just going to play some records. It's going to be a good show, just a music show. And I come in, and Mike, who's maybe 30 feet away in his van, we're like communicating on Facebook. like that.
Because we're modern people.
That's it, exactly. It's not because we're both antisocial. And so he says, hey, did you see the anti-Muslim card in KFUG? And I've been in here. I'm ready to start spinning some records and having a good time. And I'm like, oh, no. And so I find this card. It's this laminated card that's maybe like a 6x9 kind of thing here. And it's got a piece of paper cut out, laminated to the card, and it's got the Muslim crescent moon and star. And over it, it says, the Quran tells Muslims over 100 times that they should kill everyone who is not Muslims. And then in a bold, red outlined drop print there, it says, got it? So I go through a number of emotional reactions right off the bat. How best to deal with this? Because I look at this and, first, okay, here's a statement. It's just a statement. And it may or may not be true. I honestly don't know. I don't know why I'm holding it up to you guys like this, like it's show and tell. But
Vanna White.
Yeah, no, exactly. It is such a loaded thing to say. It is in this day and age such a loaded statement to make. You can't ignore the context. You can't ignore any of it. And then I'm sitting here basically at the head of a community radio station that has a whole bunch of concerns. I have a whole bunch of concerns, as KFUG does, whether it's to our community, to represent the community, to the FCC, to also ideas about public discourse that I have. And so it got me thinking about, all right, I sat here with a Sharpie and a few pieces of paper and started to write a sternly worded note to all the volunteers and thinking about what to do about this. Put this up and say, if you're saying anything like this on KFUG, at least balance it with some of the messed up crap out of the Bible. Let's go through, I've got 5 words for you. Deuteronomy. Let's read that. Leviticus. Let's go through it. Yeah. Exactly. And the one you pointed out.
Samuel.
Yeah.
Which calls for the genocide of an entire race of people.
What did you call them the other day? The amalgamites or something like
that?
The
amalgamites, yeah. I mean, it does. It talks about kill every man, every woman, every child, every pig, every cow, all of it.
So
it's got a vendetta against the pigs and the cows too.
That's deep.
That's
everybody.
Yeah. That is, it's like, I don't. So I'm trying to figure out then in here we are, a community radio station, both spouting off to the community, and then hopefully reflecting what the community wants to say. So what happens, and what are my concerns? What should my concerns be if what the community has to say is really messed up in my mind? And so the first thing I had to figure out was, how is this messed up in my mind? Well, this is messed up because we all know how somebody who believes this about the Quran or about Muslims or looks down on Muslims think they're a threat. We all know how they would defend this. Well, that's a true fact. That's a fact right there.
Can they look it up? Can they point that out? I mean, have they read the Quran?
Yeah, I don't know.
Have they actually counted the number of times it does or does not say kill people?
Exactly. So whoever created this, how much research went into it? How much could they back this up? But even if it's true, and this is because I'm going, we're talking about 1,500-year-old religious books, right? So yeah, it probably says this, so, just like the Bible does. Even if it's true, what do I do with this? Because to come into a public forum and to just state this fact without acknowledging context, without offering any sort of supporting evidence, just to state that in America in 2019, there is a whole lot of baggage attached to this.
Well, and the more I think about it, I'm sort of separating what's on that card into two things: what's written about the Quran, and then the phrase "got it," because that's the message, right? And that's the message is: be afraid, they're out to get you, them first.
They said it themselves. It's obvious.
It's obvious.
Yeah.
And I think part of the thing for me that I have an issue, and I don't want to get into big travel log. I've been to the Middle East twice, okay? And I can tell you that I have personally experienced walking down a dirt road in a rural town in Syria with like a camel head hanging outside the grocery store. This is true. Dressed in a salwar kameez, right? So, white guy, salwar kameez, walking by himself, dirt road, camel head, with like a bunch of people praying in a storefront mosque out into the middle of the street, them waving to me, going, come on over and let's hang out.
Right.
And so this whole idea that, like every Muslim in the world is out to kill you is nuts. I've personally experienced that that's not true, whether it's written in the Quran or not.
Well, and it's no leap of imagination to say, all right, so let's say we're at a community radio station someplace in Jordan, Syria,
right,
and somebody has a card like this, and it just says the same thing about the Bible. And yeah, for being much more familiar with Judeo-Christianity and saying, all right, look, I know that the Bible says all that. It says a lot of things. Bible says a lot of things. It's all over the place. It's this whole like three-dimensional thing. It's got a history. It's got all this history of interpretation as well.
So does the Quran.
Exactly my point is that because of my knowledge of our side, right, the Judeo-Christian side, I can see, if somebody were to do the same thing, referencing Christianity in the Bible, I would know that it was a lie, that it was a half-truth, that it was a misrepresentation.
Right.
Whereas here, probably the people who did this haven't read the Quran, don't know. They probably saw something on Facebook that said this, printed it out, and made a physical meme out of it like this.
Well, and the question is do they really even care, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not about what's in the Quran. It's about how can we use something as a way to gin people up against Muslims and to fan religious bigotry.
Right.
You're tuned to KFUG Crescent City. My name is Mike Thornton. This is Public Process. We're joined by Paul Critz, Jessica Cejnar, and Avi Critz in studio. We're talking about free speech in your community and on your community radio station. The numbers in the studio are 707-460-6100. So there's plenty of fodder here. But I also do want to put something else big that happened in the community on the table as well.
It's very much related.
Very much related, and that is the issue of local environmental philosopher activist Derek Jensen, who was recently a guest on this program, and concerns about what are some of the other things that he addresses and talks about. Do you want to jump in on this, Avi, or do you want someone else to set the stage for it?
I don't mind setting the stage. I don't have all of the information. I just know what I'm told from the members of the Climate Justice Alliance who were conversing with Derek Jensen about his arranged speech in during the Climate Justice Week.
So let me, and please anyone else help me set the stage. So so there was a Climate Justice Week taking place here in Del Norte County. A group of people, local people, the Del Norte Climate Justice Alliance, set up a series of events. One of those events was going to be a talk on climate and related issues. Derek Jensen was invited to be part of that discussion, but then when the local organizers of this event were contacted by other folks, that resulted in Mr. Jensen being disinvited, or the word that I am becoming more familiar with is deplatformed.
So the local Climate Justice Alliance was contacted by other nonprofit organizations in, I believe, Oregon and some other California spaces. And they just kind of let us know, hey, so Derek Jensen has spoken at our events about like environmental stuff, climate justice stuff, and he has also used that platform to kind of bring in these other ideals and kind of points of view that are pretty transphobic and pretty. I believe the main point that they were bringing up was he does not think that trans women belong in spaces for women. So and has used his platform of environmentalist and activist to kind of bring these other ideas forward. And that's just what they were told by the other nonprofits. And so the local Climate Justice Alliance let Derek Jensen know, hey, the room that you're going to be giving a speech in is the same room where we hold gender talk in the Chicanx Club. So like, this is a space that we want to be safe for queer folks and people of color, and this is a space we would like that to be respected. We want to make sure no trans folks feel uncomfortable about this. And I believe that was the email they sent him was like this: we want this space to be respected for trans folks. And I believe that kind of started the I don't know how to phrase it.
Brouhaha.
The brouhaha, the technical term.
I guess my question is, and I'm trying to recall because we both saw the organizers from the Climate Justice Alliance and the week's events. They showed us like a Facebook. They sent us links to posts and comments back and forth and things. And I'm trying to recall if Jermaine or Crystal asked him about his intentions with the speech before deplatforming him. Or did they just say, "Hey, we heard you believe this, and so we're going to deplatform"? I don't recall.
I don't know the answer to that either. And I would invite any of the organizers of the Del Norte Climate Justice Alliance, if you want to call in and be part of this discussion, we'd love to get your perspective on all of it. 707-460-6100, and then of course, if other members of our community want to call in. So I don't know the answer to that. And was there a discussion saying, hey, look, you know what I mean, we're wanting you to come speak about the environment. Mm-hmm. These are the things that we're concerned about. Are you going to raise those or not?
Right. Yeah. And really that's not, I don't want to get hung up on that and say, because first off, I want to, and this is just going into kind of very, and if Derek's listening, sorry, this is going to be a very broad brush sort of a painting of these ancillary views that people take offense with, based on sort of the primacy of biology and what he has called biotic life on planet Earth, and how biotic life is struggling for its very existence now. That's wrapped up with sort of what seems to be and this is anyway, biological determinism in a way, in that biology is primary. And if you're talking gender, biology can't be primary, just that's the nature of the discourse, right? So the radical feminist critique of trans issues, can you talk about that? Can you talk to that, what that means and why it is so upsetting?
I can definitely speak to that. trans exclusionary radical feminists, or TERFs as they are known. That's a thing. Yeah.
Everybody has a name, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. That is kind of the viewpoint of radical feminists who want to exclude trans women from all women's spaces.
Because they're not really
Because they're
women.
just men who are confused and
Right.
trying to invade women's spaces. Big air quotes on that.
And so it seems to be an equivalence between toxic masculinity and trans folks wanting to be trans folks. They equate those two things. Or trans women wanting to be.
Yes, yeah, kind of. Their viewpoints are basically, like trans women are really just men trying to invade women's spaces like men always do, and trans men are just confused lesbians who
Right,
are
right.
bowing to the patriarchy, basically.
Okay.
That's again the broad kind of general viewpoint that a lot of TERFs, and I'm sure there's spectrum of how radically they believe that.
I have a great idea for an event. It's a screening of Thelma and Louise with Derek Jensen. We should do it. Seriously,
And
that'd be
you
great.
know what? Let me also, Derek, if you are listening, let me invite you to call in as
Yes,
well.
please,
Definitely.
please.
707-460-6100. So here's the question, and if I don't have it formulated completely in my mind, please forgive me. So it sounds like from what you're saying, Avi, this perspective is not something that is limited to one person. There is a group of people who believe this thing.
They got their own nick. They got their own
They
nickname.
got their own
and
nickname, right.
it is a unfortunately pretty large community.
And there is an equally large community that finds this to be not just offensive, but and you correct me if I'm wrong, but if not hate speech.
Definitely, yeah.
Right.
It's a dangerous viewpoint to have for trans women who are already definitely at risk for a lot of violence. So it's not a great viewpoint. Yeah.
So if we're talking about free speech, is there a way to have these conversations, to have them in public? I mean, can they be discussed in public if on the one hand it's hate speech, if on another hand somebody sees it as the survival of the planet, right? You know, I mean, because that's really what I'm sure, I shouldn't say I'm sure. I'm sure if I asked, whoever wrote the anti-Muslim sign would say, oh, no, I'm not bigoted against Muslims. You know, I'm just saying that because they're so violent that they want to kill us because they hate our way of life, right? Yeah.
Well, what's the evidence for that? I mean,
Please jump in, Jessica.
what's the evidence for that? I mean, my question would be, is the context in which this talk is being given, is it relevant for those viewpoints to be brought out? I mean, you know, I would think that a talk on climate change wouldn't be. I would think that whatever issues about trans people that anyone has isn't really that relevant to a discussion on climate change. I would question the relevance.
And some of the things that the other organizations who contacted the folks here locally said was that Derek had in the past during talks veered off into these things. Like they couldn't guarantee, and it's not their place to guarantee, but they couldn't guarantee that Derek wouldn't end up in this space and talking about these things just through the natural flow of his discussions, because his ideas are all kind of, a one. They're wrapped up inside a very specific point of view. So they were afraid that even giving him access to an audience and talking about climate change and his ideas about capitalism and climate change, that would somehow lead into a space that would be unsafe for trans folks. For now, I don't know. I'm not sure. I mean, that's Derek Jensen's a smart guy, really smart guy. Read a room. And now, what's interesting is that he was slated to talk on Wednesday afternoon, right? Wednesday afternoon, they cancel him a couple of days before. He raises a big stink on Facebook and then ends up going down to CR and giving his talk on the grass outside, which that's very Greco, man. That's very Agora, right on. But Avi was there, and you spoke with him. And did he, in the part of the talk that you see, was there any mention about the turf?
Not that I was there for, because I saw the post that he said, "Oh, I'm going to go do this out on the lawn." I saw that like at 1:40, and he started the speech around like 1:10 or so.
Yeah,
so I
yeah.
missed the beginning where I don't know if any of that was discussed at the beginning when everyone was kind of gathered around at the beginning. I was there at the end, and there was no mention of any like trans issues. It was really just him talking about the environment and how capitalism is destroying us, which I definitely agree with for sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was no mention of the kind of the situation that had brought them all out there.
But you
There
had
was no
talked to
discussion.
him. You talked to him after. You asked him.
I
questions,
did,
right?
and I asked him like if he had anything to say about the situation with the Climate Alliance, the Climate Justice Alliance, and do you have any statement for that? And he said, "No, I'm just here to talk about the murder of the planet."
Right.
And that's sure. Okay. And he didn't speak on it at all. And I asked him specifically, and he just said, "No, I'm just here to talk about this." Which
Right. That seems like that's what they'd want. That's what the organizers would have wanted. So.
You're tuned to KFUG Crescent City 101.1 on your FM radio dial, worldwide on the internet, kfugradio.org. I'm Mike Thornton. This is Public Process, joined in the studio by Paul Critz, Avi Critz, and Jessica Cejnar. It's 11:31 on this Monday morning. The number in the studio, 707-460-6100. So I guess, once again, to try and maybe to broaden this out a little bit. So this whole thing of deplatforming is something that garners a lot of press and consternation because it's happening in various venues across the country.
You mean specifically for Derek?
My understanding is it's happening for Derek as well, that there seems to be a concerted effort to keep him from speaking. And it also happens to other speakers as well in a variety of topics and a variety of political perspectives. And so I guess the question is, and maybe it gets to that bigger discussion of what's free speech and who decides,
Right.
Because, who decides who gets deplatformed? I mean, obviously the people who, are running the event. But I mean, and I hate using this term, but it can be a slippery slope.
Yeah.
And where do we go with that? Where, only the people who are going to talk about what we decide is appropriate and who's the we, where do we go with that?
Well, it puts us in strange. What was the guy's Miles Yanamada that guy?
Milo.
Oh,
Milo,
Milo,
Milo, the guy who
yeah.
pissed everybody off, right?
Right.
And so UC Berkeley is in the position of going, you really can't talk here. That's for me, that's a bad look for UC Berkeley. Even if it's this guy. Even if it's the punchline at the end of the Blues Brothers with the guy with the Nazis on the bridge in Skokie, right? It's to be put, and this is where I come back down with the Muslim thing and my responsibilities with KFUG is I'm not comfortable being the guy saying you can't say that, even if what you're saying is crazy talk, and there are things that are crazy talk, and I'm not trying to equate like what Derek says is crazy. You would say it's crazy talk. I don't know enough about the ins and outs of the whole thing to say, oh, it's crazy talk. But for me, it's a larger issue of my personal reaction. If this is crazy talk, do I really? I can't be that guy who says you can't say that. I'd like to be the guy who says I trust you to know what you can and can't say. That may be asking too much.
Caller, are you with us?
No. Did you just hang up on him?
I might have. we
Oh, there it is. Call back. I'll go make sure it's working.
Yes, call back. We'll definitely, and I know who's trying to call, so please call back and we'll get you on the air. Thank you very much.
Answer it,
Okay.
then turn it on there, and then you can hang
Okay, so
We
all I
got
have
this.
to do is hit this one, right?
top one, yeah.
Got it.
Yep.
Okay. Caller, please call back in.
There it is.
Caller, you're live on the air on KFUG.
Well, you knew it would be me, Mike.
I saw your text. Thank you for doing that.
Okay, I just wanted to call in, and I was hoping that
why don't
Derek
you
would call
introduce?
in, too.
Yes. Who
Please
is this?
introduce yourself.
This is Crystal. I'm Crystal Helton, part of the Donor Climate Justice Alliance.
Hey, Crystal.
Thank
Good
you
morning.
for calling in.
Yes, thank you, Crystal.
Good morning. I just wanted to answer some of your questions. Paul, no, we did not ask him, and that's something I wanted to do, but we didn't. When we found out Monday evening from some of our organizers and sister organizations in Oregon, environmental justice organizations, that he's had pretty much like a 6-year history of being unpredictable.
Mm-hmm.
There was an incident in Eugene when he got deplatformed. Him and his Deep Green Resistance have been banned from a lot of organizing in Oregon because of their transgender and queer bashing. And as a nonprofit who gets to decide who's involved, we said no, and without even asking. The first information I got, was kind of 2013, so I thought, well, maybe he's not doing that, and it was very shocking, to be quite honest with you, because I've never known any of this stuff, and I do respect Derek. Actually, I respect him, and I did want him to be a part of our work locally. I think he needs to be a part of our work locally, but at the same time, it's not about so much, safe space is definitely an issue, but for me, we're an inclusive group. That's it, period. And we are not going to platform, if you want to call it that, because I don't think we deplatformed. I think he needs to get his own platform, is what I think. And our platform is inclusive, and if there's any risk that you are going to be exclusive and bash the way that I've heard him bash or heard of him bash from someone who was there, we were like, no way. There's no way we're doing this. We have, we're an inclusive group, and that's why we made the decision.
That's an interesting point, and you point out it's kind of the place where I sit in KFUG too, when confronted with some of the things that our DJs say and want to put out into the community, and it is, and I think that's what it kind of boils down to, and I'm trying to formulate the thought. It is that if in my effort, just as with you, Crystal, and the Alliance, in our efforts to be inclusive, if we include somebody who is exclusive in their message, then that cuts right across your purposes for the event, and just as it would cut across my purposes for having KFUG and trying to represent our community. And that's the irony, that's the twist I think that a lot of people don't understand, is that if your message is to tell other people that they don't have a space, that they don't have a message, that they don't have a voice, then I can't include your message in ours.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's
I think it was also not just what we have very limited experience with him. It's through email.
Mm-hmm. And I feel really bad because I think that both, at least I don't know about Mike, but we were responsible for kind of bringing him to your attention, or at least seconding
I wouldn't feel
the
bad.
motion.
Like I said, he does amazing work. He does important work. He's, but I think our limited experience with him on email, he was very gracious to me when we first invited him, and then when Jermaine sent the email Monday evening saying, "Hey, look, we're not gonna. This is something we can't accept and we can't promote." Then it became, he calling us fascists, telling us we were stupid and ridiculous. And had he been like, you know what, that's something you know what, you're right. That's something that I believe, and I'll make an effort to not bring that up. But that's not what he did. Mm-hmm. He did that narcissistic kind of victim blaming bullshit. Sorry for my language. That is, again, like, that was another, like, red flag. Like, I don't want someone who's going to attack me who's never met me and attack me as a person just because I'm making a decision. And we're working on being a nonprofit, and we are our own private organization. We are not public. We can decide who we include and who we don't. And we're going to include everybody who wants to include everybody.
Right,
That's it.
Right.
Well, and there are a lot of organizations who have, policies against discrimination, too.
Mm-hmm,
I mean...
Mm-hmm.
A lot of nonprofit organizations, government agencies, and everything else. I mean, I think that the unpredictability part of it is valid, because what if he does say something? I mean, you jeopardize potentially.
Well, yeah, you could be on the outs with CR.
Right.
for something like that. Right, exactly.
Oh yeah, no, and not only that, but we have trans friends. Like, I'm sorry, that's just not what we do. And we could get a whole other topic of radical feminism, but I just need to remind you that Indigenous feminist women, we don't think like this. We don't exclude people like this, and so it does go against kind of what we as individuals also deeply believe in, and so I just wanted to call in and kind of clarify. No, we did not ask him, but based on his response, and Monday night when I knew she was sending that email, I just thought, okay, let's see how he responds, and maybe we can figure something out. And after that long tirade, I was like, yeah, sorry, this isn't going to work.
No, and he did kind of jump into that sort of hyper defensive language right away.
Oh,
too.
right away.
Yeah.
Right away. It wasn't like, like, let's figure out how we can work across this. I won't do this, and you guys let me have this platform. No, it was that we were, we're basically Orwellian and all the things I already said. So
and Crystal, I just want to say, anytime you want to call up with the rooster,
hey, I got two of them.
it's all good. I love hearing it. That's wonderful.
I got, for a minute, I thought your promo for community service.
I do have about 30 chickens at my house. So.
Right on.
Crystal,
That's it.
thank you very much for calling in and
guys,
sharing your
it's a really good
perspective.
topic, and I encourage, if Derek wants to reach out and talk about this, I will talk about this with him, but
Okay.
I'm not going to talk about it and be called names or have my work kind of like, or our work at all questioned because we made this decision, because we did it because this is the kind of group we are.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you very much for calling
Thank you
in.
guys. Have
Thanks.
a good morning.
Thanks, Crystal.
Thank you.
So two things that I would think. First off, once again, and caller,
It's the
hang
rooster
on.
now.
Caller, you're live on the air.
Hey, Mike, Paul, Avi, it's Chris.
Hey,
Good
Chris.
morning. Great show. So much stuff coming. I really appreciate Crystal's comments. I like the message of inclusiveness and two different platforms. Transgender issues belong on a separate platform from climate issues. I want to just quickly go back to the beginning of the show, some quick thoughts that occurred to me. I'm calling it Islamophobic poster, which was posted anonymously in the station. We know who it was. But it
We
reminds me
think
of,
we know who it was.
Chris is a longtime dedicated listener.
Yes, I know.
He knows who
Thank
knows
you.
who it was.
Yeah.
I know I run into Chris when I'm out at the ocean. So
Oh, okay,
he's,
all right,
yes.
we have me and Mike have some good chats. But I was reminded of if you go online and you Google pictures of Ku Klux Klan next to Islamic terrorists, the one thing that I noticed is that both of them have masks on. They don't want anybody to know who they are, which is interesting to me. And also the whole free speech issue. I recall being in the credit union a couple of years ago. There was a car in there that had a lot of bumper stickers, window stickers on it, very disparaging comments about Democrats and and Barack Obama, et cetera, et cetera. And I went up to this person. I said, "Excuse me." And they said, "What?" And I said, "I just wanted you to know I voted for Barack Obama twice, and if he could run a third time, I'd run for him again." And she started screaming at me, "You can't come up and talk to me like that." I said, "I absolutely can. You're exercising your free speech rights. I'm exercising my free speech rights."
Wow.
I want
for
those
you.
people. I want those people to exercise their free speech rights so I can keep an eye on them and see who they are and where they are, because they scare me.
Yeah.
Caller, thank you very much for
Thanks,
calling
Chris.
in.
Okay.
Now-
I want to keep listening to the show, so I'm signing off for now.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Chris.
Great. Bye.
Nah, Chris has walked up, and Chris was the guy who walked up to us in grocery outlet years
that was
ago.
awesome. That was great.
Yeah, I'm walking with Avi, my trans kid, and I think you had a button or something.
I had my big denim jacket with my Protect Trans Kids sticker on, or like patch on the back. Yeah, and he came up and complimented it.
just
It was-
out the
yeah.
blue, came up and going, right on, I support you. He's a good guy.
And the numbers in the studio, 707-460-6100. This is Public Process on your community radio station, KFUG, Crescent City. 11:44 on this Monday morning. So two things coming out of the caller's discussion. One is it reminded me of something that happened when I worked for a different organization. We decided to let the local SEIU union use our space. And so they came to use our space. And someone parked their car out in front of our office. And on the back window of the car, it said, "Death to lefties."
Oh,
right? And
I've been through this, yeah.
And the people who ran the store next to our office went absolutely ballistic, called the police. They
Oh my gosh.
came in force.
Wow.
Because this person said that was a terroristic threat. Because the people who populated their shop, their customers they considered them to be lefties.
Yeah.
And there was this whole gigantic drama that, eventually came down to the person moving their car. So the death to lefties thing was not publicly viewable.
When was this?
I'm gonna say not this summer, but the summer before that.
Was it Dandelion?
It was actually, I believe, his sister.
Okay, well, Death
Tara.
to Lefties has nothing to do with anything political.
I
It's about
understand
being-
that.
Yeah, it's about being left-handed.
Yes, and we tried to explain that, but the person was, past the
Yeah.
point of listening to any explanation other than "you're threatening me, I'm triggered now."
And so, but how did they respond? They moved, right?
Well, yeah, eventually. But I mean, there was this point where the argument was, I have a right to park this car in a legal space, and it says whatever it says, and you don't have a right to tell me that I have to move it or cover it up or whatever. And the other person going, "You're threatening me, you're threatening, I'm calling the police." And then, of course, I was stuck in the middle, going, how do I deal with this? Because on the one hand, I believe in free speech.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I have to
be a
have an
dick.
office next to this person, and I have to deal with that
Yeah,
as
yeah,
well.
yeah.
So that was one thing that came out of the caller's comments for me. Because I think in some ways we have to get to this point of how do we balance all of these things?
Wow. So, I mean, it's obviously, to me, it seems it always comes down to it's like an active thing, right? It's not. I'm also never comfortable with here's spelled out, here's written out, here's how we're going to define free speech, and it's going to be this, and it's going to be this. I do appreciate what the Supreme Court has done over the years about, well, you know it when you see it. And when you cross the line, but as far as defining that line, it's kind of an organic process. You can't etch that in stone. I don't think. Jessica, can you?
no.
Surprise. I'm sorry, you were sipping your beer.
It's
No,
water.
she stops drinking earlier in the day.
That's nice. We do not mean to impugn your reputation. I didn't know if that was kombucha or kombucha,
And
whatever that's
let's
called.
be very clear.
I don't know, kombucha.
It is an inside joke, and no one
It's
here
water
is
with
drunk.
Crystal Light in it. Jeez.
Oh, Crystal Light. Okay, all right.
Is that what they're calling it these days?
Yeah, that's what they're calling. Oh my God. Okay.
So, what do you? I mean, when you're writing an article, what is your baseline? I can include this. I can't include this, as far as the truth of a statement or an assertion.
If it's an official source, for example, if I'm writing an article about someone being arrested, and my information has to come from an official source, like the sheriff's office or the police department or the DA, or, I can't just quote some bystander, a neighbor, whoever, who says, I know that person did it because he was on meth, and I can't do that.
But so, what's the underpinning of that of wanting to source things like that? Is it because an official person could be held responsible for their statements in an official capacity, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And plus, I actually got in trouble early in my career for not using an official. I mean, I thought he was an official source, but he wasn't really, and I got in trouble. I was covering a car accident. This was when I was working in Alaska at the time, and it was a fatal. And the fire marshal said that the person had died at the hospital. What I should have done is I should have gotten that statement from a doctor at the hospital.
Oh, wow. Okay. Because
And I didn't do that.
All right.
And it turned out the person did in fact die, but not when I was told that he died.
Okay.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah, sure. Because you were getting something secondhand from somebody who wasn't.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and let me ask a question. I don't want you to feel like you're being piled on here, Jessica,
No,
but I'm serious about this. So we have two examples on the table here this morning. One is this statement about the Quran and then saying, got it, right? So let's say local politician, local elected official, whoever it may be, says, I support President Trump's ban on Muslims. Why do you support that? I support it because the Quran says this. Got it? Does that make it into your article? This part. The Quran says X. Got it.
If this were a quote.
If that were a quote from...
If I quoted that directly from the official?
yes.
Probably, but that's a good question. I would probably put that in there, but I would also probably find a person who's an authority or as close to an authority as I could find on the Quran. My other question is, in this hypothetical situation, what is the context that this is being brought up in? Why is he saying that that Muslims, that he doesn't like Muslims? Like, is he running for election? Is there some kind of is he already elected and there's some kind of a policy decision or whatever that he's considering that has something to do with Muslims? I mean, what is the context? Why would I write about it is my question.
Right, because what does it matter on some level what a local politician really has to say about Muslims, unless that is manifesting itself in some sort of policy or action?
Right. There's a relevance issue at question. In my opinion, there would be.
Would you feel obligated? Okay, let's say it's a relevant thing for him. It's not like, I'm backing the change of this parking ordinance because the Quran says. It's not like that. It's more specific things. Say about the.
I'm waiting for somebody to say.
I know, right? And let's let public comments at the next board of
I'll
supervisors.
report on that just because it sounds like a really weird thing to say.
And it's an irrelevant sort of factor that comes into it then. But let's just say it is a comment about Muslimity, which is what I call it. If it is relevant, do you have a responsibility to fact check something like that?
Absolutely.
Okay. Even if really, I mean, so like you've got an article about this is.
Well, either that.
Or would you?
I don't know. I've thought about this. Like, do I print something that? I mean, that's not a fact. That is not a fact.
It's an assertion.
It's an assertion. It could be a misconception. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I don't know anything. I don't know enough about the Quran to know if that's a fact or not.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Is it relevant to the argument, to the situation? Again, if it is, then I would fact check it. Okay. Absolutely. If it's not, I probably wouldn't even put it in my article.
Okay.
Well, and I think we're also talking about the difference between different types of media for consumption. Because on the one hand, Jessica, and correct me if I'm wrong, is talking about hard news.
Yeah.
Then there's also opinion programming as well, which is a different standard. And I just want to throw this on the table for discussion if it's worth discussing. When I did radio programming at another station, I had the head of the Aryan nations on my show.
Holy crap! Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I did. And I actually had on another occasion the head of White Aryan Resistance on my show.
Wow.
My rationale for that is that I believe slimy things grow better in the dark. Mm-hmm. And that the more light and the more transparency you have on even the ugliest of ideologies, that's the best disinfectant.
Absolutely.
That's sort of my general premise. And there were plenty of people who were really angry with me for doing that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, how dare you have those people on our airwaves saying those hateful things?
That sounds like a situation the lumberjack at Humboldt State had when I was on it. We ran a letter to the editor from somebody who was very much America, love it or leave it. They should, the illegal immigrants or should go home and stuff. And there were a bunch of people that were really upset about that. And as a matter of fact, I think at one point, and I don't remember if it was connected with this particular letter, but there was a point where the student body government was meeting with the lumberjack and suggested that someone should monitor what the lumberjack prints.
Wow.
And
a completely
or,
reasonable.
Actually, you know what? I take that back. That was actually my roommate who said that. But there was a point. There was a point where the student government was concerned with what was in the opinion page and met with us about it.
Wow.
And our advisor at the time, Marcy Burstener, who's way awesome, she would bring in guest people to critique our paper, and the person that she brought in after that letter ran said the exact same thing. He's like, I want to know there are people like this that think this way out there. I think people need to know that.
You're tuned to KFUG, Crescent City. This is Public Process. I'm your host, Mike Thornton. We're joined by Jessica Cejnar in studio, Paul Critz, Avi Critz. It is 11:56 on this Monday morning, and we're talking about free speech. The number in the studio, 707-460-6100. We would very much welcome your thoughts and opinions on these crucial topics. So, Paul, let me move this towards KFUG if I can, okay? It's a community forum. It's the public airwaves. It's volunteer-driven radio. And at the same time, there's a level of not just legal, but social and moral responsibility as well.
Yep.
How do you balance all of those things and at the same time providing as open a community venue for the community to reflect its multitude of ideologies and perspectives so it can communicate with itself in an open manner? Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, sure. I think I could characterize how I balance it as poorly, but but no. Actually, no. I think a lot about these things. I got a call a couple of months ago from a listener who's just a fantastic. It was the person I gave him your number because they wanted to talk to you about something specific,
yes.
And she had been a listener seriously since as long as K. She was like pulling up like DJ names from like 6-7 years ago, and I'm like, wow, right on. If we ever make shirts, you get one. And one thing she did, she was going through, we have a show that's on, it's a couple of guys who talk for a couple of hours every week. And I'll say it, it's the Death to Lefties show, which is, we talk, it's Dandelion and Ben, and they come in here and they talk, and Jason joins them, and sometimes it's funny, and sometimes it's silly, and sometimes it's conspiracy theories. It's just, guys talking. Well, she told me one of those conspiracy theories that they were talking about was that Sandy Hook didn't happen. And I'm like, ow, that's like...
I hate that.
That's Alec Jones BS, man. I don't want that on KFUG. But again, what do I do? What do I do with that? I don't want to set myself up for being a guy who's listening to KFUG all the time, running across the driveway over here saying, you can't say that, and running back over.
Were they talking about the conspiracy theory itself, or were they saying that Sandy Hook didn't happen.
I actually asked for that. I asked the woman about that because I hadn't heard that firsthand, and she was saying that one guy was opining that it was in fact a false flag sort of thing, and it was what did they call the crisis actors, the things like that, all that Alec, it's the stuff that got Alex Jones kicked off of YouTube.
Right.
So okay, that's horse hockey. I don't appreciate that being on KFUG. Does that exclude another person's point of view? Is that telling somebody what they said? Does it exclude another point of view? Is that, just as I was talking with Crystal, if we sort of set it up, and this is how I've always kind of believed, is if you're walking, and it's an ironic thing, and it's hard to get your head around. And I've actually gone back and forth with even like Roger Gitlin on Facebook about this kind of thing. It's really hard to understand this. I understand. But the ironic twist is, I cannot back the expression of your idea if your idea is walking around trying to squelch the expression of other people. So if your message is shut up, then my message to you is shut up. Yeah, that puts us in this, and this is where I talk about how logic falls apart sometimes. This puts us logically on the same footing, where there's an equivalency now between us, because I'm saying shut up and you're saying shut up. But I'm telling you to shut up because you're walking around and you're talking about killing people, or you're talking about excluding people, or you're talking about the illegitimacy of some group of people. No.
It's kind of the whole analogy where your right to wield your fists ends when it connects with my nose,
right.
Something like that.
Yeah, exactly. So my initial reaction, just as it was with this thing, with the Muslim card, was, oh my God, no, who gets to decide? I do. And just start getting up and throwing furniture. But I'm not comfortable doing that because I don't want anybody coming to tell me to shut up someday. So no, we've talked about this sort of libertarian thing that I have with ideas. I think ideas should stand or fall based on their merits. I also think that a lot of the public today don't have the tools to merit those things themselves. But I think if somebody says something like this didn't happen, then every reasonable person listening to KFUG should be able to go, all right, I'm not going to take into consideration what you have to say anymore because you're obviously an idiot. So that's the kind of censorship I'm comfortable with. Are you talking stupid crap? Then it will fall down. If you're not talking, and I know that's a very, very, I think, naive sort of way to look at public discourse too, but I can't find a more a well-defined hill to die on in regard to free speech than simply that. If you're telling other people to shut up, then you don't have a place here. But you could be talking about aliens, and you can be talking about school shootings, and you can be talking about Muslims and all of these other things too. But yeah, it hurts. There's something inside that knots up, and I'm, what do I do with that, and how do I control this? If there was a DJ who went on and said this, and there was one time I'm sitting here next to Jamie Yarborough doing one of Jones' shows on Sundays, and he starts going off into something, and I turned to him and said, that's really irresponsible for you to say that. And I forget what it was he was saying, but that's really, really stupid. I basically told him to say that on the air. So that's the kind of censorship I'm comfortable with. Discourse. Somebody step up and go, no, that's a crock, and here's why. That's where I am now, and I don't feel comfortable in that place. I don't feel comfortable in that place after this, and I don't feel comfortable in that place after the thing with Derek Jensen last week, because I do understand all of the issues that go into that. But yeah, I'm not sure how to lay out the framework to have responsible discourse that I can feel comfortable about. I can feel comfortable that everything that's emanating from the antenna back up over the roof here is adding to the community and not detracting from the community or creating, dark spaces and hate amongst us.
It's 12 noon. You are tuned to KFUG Crescent City 101.1 on your FM radio dial, worldwide on the internet, kfugradio.org. This is Public Process. I'm your host, Mike Thornton. We're joined in studio by Paul Critz, Jessica Cejnar, and Avi Critz. We're talking about free speech. Who decides? Who limits it? Can it be limited? What is the role of community media and community radio like KFUG in that discussion and debate? 707-460-6100. So Paul, I think there's part of me, like most things libertarian, like 50% of that I love, right?
Yeah.
And then the other part of it, I'm going,
That's not how it works.
yeah, and I know. And the other part of it is if it comes over the airwaves, it gets a extra boost of, I don't know what the right word is at the moment. If I hear people
It's legitimacy. It
yeah,
gets an extra-
legitimacy.
yeah.
Or if I read it in an article on the web or something, it does get an extra boost of legitimacy.
I think that,
And those things can be incredibly detrimental, not just to individual people, but if we're talking, and I'm just going to use the Sandy Hook thing for a minute, right? And I'm not, this isn't to say like you're wrong or anything. It's just like, so these people had children who died,
Yeah.
and people are promulgating things that are saying that's a lie.
Yeah.
So then there's that pain. Then there's the impediments that kind of thing puts into public discourse and public policy about what do we do about guns and mass shooting and kids in school dying. So it's not so it's like, yes, you got the right to say that kind of stuff, but the full range of the impacts that has on people that you will never meet can be life-changing, life-threatening. I mean, it's a big deal.
And that's kind of maybe what I should do on my end is to make sure that idea is much more consciously expressed to every DJ on KFUG. That like, I believe you can be able to say up to a certain point, if you're excluding, if you're being hateful, if you're calling for, people to die. Yeah, up to that point, you should be able to say what you want, but I would also expect you to understand the context of what you say. I think that what you said about things being said over the air being ratcheted up a little bit in terms of legitimacy is true, and I also think it's wrong. And I think that
Well, I agree with you.
in that, yeah, it's true. But I think those days are gone. I mean, and that's because you and I grew up in a world where there were very limited media outlets, and so you expected certain things from those media outlets, and those media outlets, to a large part, took those responsibilities to heart, and produced news separate
Some
from
of those
profit.
media outlets still take those responsibilities to heart.
Yes, but that's the difference, is that now they are only some.
Right.
And now there are media outlets everywhere. Anybody with a computer can be a media outlet. And a lot of those media outlets, and people like Donna Westfall, I think, fall prey to these things that come out and they look legitimate, but really it's just some sort of anti-abortion sort of thing, some sort of right-wing thing, but it's presented like it's an article. It's not clickbait, right? It looks legitimate, and I think that's as far as most people go nowadays. So that seeming legitimacy, I think, is something that culturally and in the media we need to lose. And let's get back to the ideas, because anybody can look, because in America we're the packagers, and anybody can look legitimate. But what are they saying?
Well, I think that also falls into like the term literacy, like media literacy. How media literate are you? Are you
Right.
able to tell the stuff that looks like articles but aren't articles from an actual article?
Yeah, and I think that for the most part, there have been people who've been sitting on the city council who shared stuff that I'm like, are you kidding me? Did you read this?
Right.
And so, yeah, I think we are struggling to understand the media that we have, and media literacy is something that we should all across the board be working on, and maybe should be taught in school and all
I think
kinds
it
of
should
things.
absolutely be taught in school.
I think they do generally they try to do that.
How so?
When they're like, oh, look for a source, they tell you, okay, check this, make sure it's so. In a way, they're saying, hey, check each article for, like, okay, what source is it? How credible is this? So in a really roundabout way, they're kind of doing it, but it's mainly just for citing stuff in like papers. But they are in a small way,
Yeah.
like teaching kids, okay, make sure to take note of this. Does it look like legit? So I mean, they kind of do that, but I don't think they teach it to the extent that it should be taught.
Well, so I'd like to expand on that with you, if you don't mind, because I think you've said it, but I really would. So we live in this, information age where you're constantly being bombarded with all kinds of stuff. And I remember being somewhere where there was a big thing scrawled on a wall, and it said World War III will be fought inside your head. And I believe that. I really do, that it's a media information war. And so are they, because you're the most recent person to be in school around here, Avi, are they doing anything to help young people cope with that environment?
Oh, no. No. Of course not. No.
Well, you say, of course not. Why of course not?
I don't think, at least in this community, in this school, I think, at least in the public schools that I've gone to, there's not a lot of focus on mental health, just across the board. Pardon me, I'm coughing a lot. I don't think there's a lot of effort put into making sure the kids are mentally good with what's going on in the society. It's just, okay, can you answer this question? Can you do this test? Great, move them on. There's not a lot of effort to make sure kids are okay mentally, which is a messed up thing. Mm-hmm. And I don't think there's a lot. I don't know if there's any kind of, I'm not sure how to phrase it. There's no preparing kids mentally for the big world. It's just kind of, hey, it's a very weird and kind of toxic and detached environment. At least the school that in my experience.
And you also, like, teachers are strapped. I mean, they have to get in certain mandated things. They're stretched, which.
Yeah, like large class sizes and different
absolutely
things they have to get in.
Requirements they have to meet from the state and the federal governments. I mean, who teaches this, and like who does this, and like when are you going to find the time to do this, and what students have? There's all these questions about how you go about making sure these needs are being met, and it's an obvious need.
Definitely, yeah.
Well, and for me, it raises the question. So on the one hand, it's this free-for-all of information that it decreasingly has people that you can look to and trust, perhaps rightly so, okay? And at the same time, we're doing nothing to help our young people survive in that environment. Mm-hmm. I mean, that seems really dangerous to me. And someone has to. I mean, I understand we can't keep going to public school teachers and say you have to fix every societal problem we have.
Definitely not.
And and on top of that, we're going to pay you like crap, and we're going to fight you to keep you from getting your gosh darn 3% raise. I mean, we can't do that. Somebody has to take some responsibility. But then on the other hand, there's this push of saying, oh, we can't have any responsibility because that would be too judgmental.
Right. Responsibility has content, and content has a purpose. And if we're not all pulling in that same purpose, then yeah.
I mean, where do we go with that? And then it becomes, like not only every individual for themselves, but every individual or every small group deciding, well, this is truth, this is not truth. This person or that group will be allowed to speak or not allowed to speak. You can have a radio show if you do this or if you don't do that. Right. I mean, where do we go with all of that?
What did you just say?
I just said it sounds like a societal breakdown.
Oh, man.
What?
That's going to be the name of my new band.
Societal breakdown. Societal breakdance.
There it is.
That's it. Okay,
it makes me feel like what I'm doing doesn't make a difference, and what teachers do doesn't make a difference, and what you guys do doesn't make a difference because
we knew
we're
that.
screwed.
Yeah, that's it.
I mean,
well, no, screwed in what way? Because you can no longer tell the difference between truth and fact and untruth and non-fact. How do you compete with what?
Just the non-stop bombardment of information, data, just stuff that's coming at you and that you have to sort out. Okay, this is truth. This is not. and use that as kind of a
I have an
barometer
answer.
for how you act.
Me too.
I have an
think
answer.
Okay.
Go ahead. You give
No,
your
no,
answer.
you go.
first.
You go.
Okay. So my answer is, okay, that because you are you, Jessica, and I know you, when you write something, I trust it.
That's one.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, and I think
Thank you
that's
for that.
well, no, and I'm not. I mean,
I think
that
this whole
sincerely.
community feels that way about
Yes,
you.
they
Actually.
do.
No, I'm not. I thank you. Thank you very much. But I'm just speaking in general terms.
No, and I know you are, and it leads me not to just say something complimentary about you, which I'm glad I had an opportunity to do anyway. Is that I think that is the role that KFUG can play too, because if you have people on the air who you see them every day at the grocery store or wherever it is, you can develop a relationship with them where you can decide whether they're full of crap or not.
Well, no, that's the beautiful part of this place. I mean, you can do that when talking to a supervisor in Safeway. You can do
Yes.
that across the board.
That's the beauty of a small town.
Right,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
exactly.
You know everybody. Yeah.
I think you've already answered. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No,
I wanna
you
finish.
go ahead.
I don't think. Okay, so you asked. It's like a societal breakdown. Yeah, it could very well be. In the past, in the old days of media, you could put.
Why do you look at me when you say that?
Because to me, you're the old days of media. What? No. Because I'm pretty sure that we both grew up in a world with 3 television stations and whatever radio you could get on the radio,
That's
and that
true.
was it, right?
And
And more newspapers, granted, but so now it's kind of flopped. So it's like, in those days, yeah, we put our trust in as public entities into, or we put our trust as individuals in these public entities, or these larger contextual things, media outlets that you could CBS News has a provenance, it has a history, it has a
Edward R. Murrow.
right on.
Yeah, there's a
Walter
prestigious.
Cronkite.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All of this meant something, and we could put our faith in what we were being told. I think that again, all of the things, the proclivities, a lot of these ways that we have of looking at ourselves in the world in the late 20th century, I think that we've all accepted as being this was the way it was and the way it should be, and I don't think it was. I think if you go back 50 years before mid-century, you go back to the turn of the century, then we're kind of awash in this same scene again with yellow journalism, where we're back where there's and some of it is just out and out lies, some of it wants to get us to fight a war with Spain. It's crazy. And then we kind of honed everything down, and we got to this point where there were more monolithic media outlets that we could sort of put our faith into because they seemed to be acting in our best interest. And then now we're back to the media chaos like we were 100 years ago. I think that the way we deal with that and keep it from being a societal breakdown is that now it falls no longer, the responsibility is no longer with the media outlets, it's with us. It's with us, and it's the media literacy. We need to learn to consume media responsibly and to understand the differences, to tell the differences between good and bad media, instead of it just being an echo chamber where we accept things that make us feel good about what we think.
Caller, you're live on the air on KFUG.
Well, Paul just said it. 1984 has been coming upon us, and it's more insidious than anything Orwell could ever have imagined. So many people that I encounter don't understand critical thinking, burden of proof, standards of evidence. And it is, the data overload is just become overwhelming. It's incumbent on the recipient to look at the information, say, does this concern me? And if it does, if it's important enough, to do your homework. Mm-hmm. And if you don't know one way or the other, it's okay to say, I don't know, which is more honest than claiming this is true or that's true and that's not, and you don't know for sure, but you're going to cling to that.
Exactly. And Chris, I'm sorry. We're moving as a society away from personal responsibility in so many ways, though.
Agreed.
It's hard to counter that.
And
I don't know, I don't know what to say about that.
That's so funny. We sounded so.
Our generation, me, you, Mike. I don't know.
I say, don't lump me in with you, old guy. But yeah, exactly. I think it was really funny how we were both sitting here touting personal responsibility. I mean, we could be on Joan's show on Sundays,
and maybe you should be.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe maybe this is a nexus between left and right.
Well, and here's the thing. I mean, I think on the one hand, and once again, it sort of reminds me of libertarian thought for some reason, because on the one hand, it's like, yes, you should be capable and responsible for doing these things, but we've just heard that there's no effort to teach young people. Oh, thank you.
Is that radio feedback?
Wait, no.
It is. There he goes.
Still on there, I think.
Yeah, no, he was too close to his radio.
Yeah, it was good.
And I'm sorry, caller. I just needed to do an emergency cutoff there.
Or you can rejoin us, Chris. Sorry about that.
Absolutely. But we've just heard from Avi that there's no effort to teach young people how to do that. And I want to say this the way I really mean it. I think, and Paul and I had this conversation off air, if I remember correctly, if you're lucky enough, fortunate enough to have that basis of information that is broad and deep enough to be able to filter all of these things, then great, you've got that. And maybe you got that through your own hard work. Maybe you got that because you had a life where you didn't have to struggle about figuring out how you were going to eat or get to school. You could actually sit and read a book. So I think it's dangerous to say, well, you should learn to fend for yourself in this media warfare. And I don't think anybody's really saying that, but there's a danger of drifting into that.
I don't. Okay, so what's the danger to that? I don't know if there's a danger to that. I don't see that. How is that not empowering?
Well, okay, so no, I hear what you're saying. So let me try and phrase it this way. And as we agree, I use hyperbole as a tool for making a point. It's not always good, but it's one I've got. So so you have these people. Let's use Pizzagate for a moment, right? So you have all these various media outlets that are pushing Pizzagate, 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 Pizzagate. And then eventually some idiot goes to a pizza restaurant in D.C., and starts shooting it up because he's completely convinced that child sex slaves are being held in the basement, to be used by Hillary Clinton and or whatever. So like on the one hand, I mean, yeah, he pulled the trigger, but they provided the ammunition.
That's right.
So
that's what makes what the
so
president.
Who's responsible?
And that's the kind of thing that makes what the president tweeted just yesterday and what I was posting about earlier today so incredibly irresponsible. But
what did he tweet?
He quoted a Texas pastor, about if the Democrats ever succeed in getting President Trump kicked out of office, parentheses, which they won't, it will result in a civil war basically it'll cause civil war in the United. And Trump quoted him in his tweet.
He knows he's subject to term limits, right? I mean,
I don't think he knows he's subject to anything.
Yeah.
And that's a whole other thing. But yeah. So I see what you're saying about that because, you have to. I was wondering about this in developing that personal responsibility. I think it's easier for you and me because we're older and have been around more and have experienced more media. I think it might be more difficult for you because you've experienced all this shotgun media your life, and maybe finding footing in that might be a little more difficult. I can go back, I can remember what good reporting looks like.
Yeah.
And it might get lost in the noise nowadays. And so it might be difficult for somebody as young as you and experiencing the 21st century media landscape to sort of develop that grounding that either is there or I'm imagining just because I'm an old nostalgic guy looking back at the 20th century.
And I don't know because I don't really have a reference for the kind of old person media that you do. We're
gonna watch Good Night and Good Luck then later as well.
Yeah, right.
Oh, make all the president's men, yo.
There you go. There you are. We We should have we got to have a KFUG community news movie
Spotlight.
night.
I'm good with that, honestly. Yeah.
Spotlight rocked. Yeah.
Oh, I don't know Spotlight.
That's good.
You know,
That was a good one. Anyway.
and then again, you know, I'm wondering, and Avi, I do want to get your perspective on this. I really do. And at the same time, I wonder if you, Avi, because of your family and because of what you've been raised with and around, might not have a leg up or more on many of the young people in this community when it comes to those kinds of things, or maybe not. I mean, I don't know.
I don't. I'm trying to think about that.
Yeah,
because
that's
I think
tricky.
I was raised by very smart people. So yeah, there you go. Yeah. So I hate to say that. I think I'm a little smarter than some of the other 18-year-olds my age. If raised that
Well.
way. I know. Yeah. I'm just,
Check out the big brain on Avi.
And I'm not.
No, I agree. No, I
I'm
totally agree.
going
And I-
with tools as
Yes.
compared to
and
intelligence.
I think the environment I was raised in kind of gave me tools to look critically at a lot of stuff. And so I think that did give me kind of an advantage growing up with just all the media and information being thrown at us. And I think growing up in that, I definitely adapted to it a bit more than say older people kind of staying on the outside of that. We grew up in that, so we're a little more used to it, and we don't know the difference. I guess we don't know good media, as you called it, and like I think it's easier for young people to kind of wade through it, and especially young people who have the tools of, okay, critically think this makes no sense. Okay, move on and find the nuggets of good media, good reporting. I think it's young people are able to kind of wade through it a bit easier.
Okay, yeah, it's not as overwhelming to you guys
because that's all we've ever known.
No.
So.
To me, I'll actually get like pissed off after a certain amount of time and have to walk away from the computer and everything. I just can't. No, I can't do this anymore. I got to go do something else. I got to do some analog.
Well, you know, back in Shelbyville, when we used to wear an
wind all my
onion on our
clocks.
belt.
Let's look in the news box. No, it's in that's tricky. An ancillary sort of thing, and I don't want to derail it at all. But then, okay, so let's go. Let's harken back, if you would, to you want to do the radio station.
Let me do that. You are tuned to KFUG Crescent City 101.1 on your FM radio dial, worldwide on the internet, kfugradio.org. 1226 on this Monday. I'm Mike Thornton. This is Public Process. We're joined by Paul Critz of KFUG, Avi Critz of our youth news team, Jessica Cejnar of Wild Rivers Outpost, and you, if you decide to call in, 707-460-6100.
So, separate from the thing between the Climate Alliance and Derek Jensen, I do believe, it's Crystal, it's Jermaine, it's their prerogative to decide who is on their platform. Definitely them. How much should a person? Okay, Derek. Let's take again Derek Jensen. What I know of his views, are the environmental side, and the critiques of capitalism, environmentalism, and the very radical ideas about the future of this planet that I think are refreshing. There are things that should be said. They do have a place in the discourse. How much should someone be held responsible for ancillary or even separate things in their own personal ethos? How much should they be held responsible for those things if they go against? If they go against what I appreciate about him, but I also know he says this messed up stuff about transgender and radical feminism. How much should I hold him responsible? Because you go to see him speak when he's out on the grass there outside CR, and there were people you know and have worked with in building healthy communities, reasonable, liberal people who came to see him speak, who obviously weren't holding him accountable for these other trans and feminist ideas he has, but wanted to hear him speak on the environment. What's your take on that? Because I'm not sure what my take is.
I have kind of conflicted feelings about that, because on one hand, his views on the environment are ridiculously important, and we need to hear what because he's a smart guy about the environment, and he has really good points that I agree with that we should listen to. And on the other hand, he has these other beliefs that are very offensive and make me feel unsafe. Mm-hmm. And that might be a stretch, but that's just kind of how I okay, you have these views about trans folks, huh? All right. I I'm instant. There's a wall up there
Sure.
that's hard for me to kind of get past. I don't think I should have to if you're. That's my own thing. Seeing other people from BHC there was kind of. It was weird because I don't know how much they knew about the stuff, all of what happened with the Alliance, but I kind of assumed, okay, since they knew he would be out here, then they were aware of all of the things that had happened.
He had said he was
posted,
gonna,
yeah. So I don't know. It's for me personally, and this is just my gut reaction. Like, wow, okay, all right. Now I know something else about people, and then I can't.
Right.
I can't, and then I have to take a step back and I'm sure they don't actively. I hope they don't actively share the kind of backwards beliefs about trans folks. But on the other hand, okay, this isn't. You can kind of see, okay, this isn't highest on their list of priorities.
Right.
So, and you have to balance that with, they're also, a lot of the people I saw are very environmentally focused. So that's their biggest priority, and going to hear this guy speak must have been really important for them and that's okay, yeah. And I think they should also just consider what he said about trans folks and keep that in mind just while listening to him speak on his stuff.
Okay.
Well,
And that's hard. It's hard for me to kind of balance that. It's weird.
Yeah, and maybe broadening that out a little bit. So we have individual. I want to be really clear, not talking about Derek or any individual at the moment. So we have somebody who's super great on the economy, but also has some really troubling views when it comes to race and interracial marriage and that kind of thing. Same principle. Can we separate those things? Would we be willing to separate them less than we might be if it's trans stuff? Because does that make sense? What I'm saying?
No, it
What if
does.
this person? What if this person was in a position to? What if he or she was an elected official?
Well, I think that's a whole different realm.
Right.
Then, I
But-
mean, if we're talking, because then we're talking about actual power to enact, and I'm not saying they're mutually exclusive. Because if you have a certain amount of standing in any given community, you actually may have also power to guide
Influence.
other thought as well. But I just wonder if we were talking about somebody, like I said, they're great on the economy, we love them, da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and then they have these very troubling views about interracial marriage. Where, how does that go, right?
I think I don't know. I think it's hard to separate kind of the economy with race because that's intersectional as heck, and just there are a lot of ways those kind of overlap and intertwine. So whereas I think the environment and trans folks don't necessarily have as much connection, and there's definitely some, but I don't think there's as much. So I think it would be harder to separate his views on race versus the economy. It's harder to kind of separate those into two completely different platforms, I think, personally. So
Deep thought is going on here. You're tuned to KFUG Crescent City. This is Public Process. I'm Mike Thornton. Glad to be your host. The number in the studio, 707-460-6100. And we would love having your input into the discussion here. Joined by Avi Critz, who you just heard, Jessica Cejnar of Wild Rivers Outpost, Paul Critz of KFUG, and as I said, I'm your host, Mike Thornton, for Public Process.
So I think that's kind of. I think I understand my problem with it, and I've sort of talked around it and just realized I'm not comfortable with standardized things, SOPs, all of that. I don't like that.
I'm shocked.
Okay, this is your last show.
I'm sorry. No, I got one more. I got one more.
You got one more tomorrow morning. That's it, and then you're out of here. 6 months off the air, Thornton. Get out of here. Because he's going away for the winter. So.
I'm doing the best I can to give you praise.
Thanks a lot.
You are banished for 6 months.
Oh, I don't know what to expect from Full Logic Reverse then tomorrow morning. It's going to be one of those FU shows, isn't it? It's going to be, yeah, all right.
It's called the I Quit Forever
I Quit
show.
Forever show. Yeah, but he's not quitting forever. He'll be back. Anyway, I'm not comfortable with standardized things. I don't like those. I think they're inhuman. And so, yeah, you can. they have to be alive. This is what I like about the Constitution. The Constitution wasn't written a couple hundred years ago and it just sits in a box and we go, oh, let's see what it says and pull up. It has to be reinterpreted every generation by every new court, and it has to go.
It's an evolving document.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think everything is an evolving document, and I seriously do. I don't think so. I am not. This is why, because sure as shooting, man. If I wrote down here's what we're going to define as free speech, next week I'd have to push the envelope on that because somebody would do something, and I just kind of feel silly for making a big deal about writing that down last week. And so I always kind of try to react. Just personally, like you asked, like what's the, people ask me, how do I get on KFUG? Well, I talk to you, and if you're not crazy or a weirdo or just a jerk, then you got a shot, and you can probably get a show on the air. But and there are people I've talked to again, no, Jesus Christ, I told couldn't have a show one time. There's a guy downtown who came in, wanted to do a show, introduced himself as Jesus Christ. I said, I'll let you know. What's your phone number, Jesus? And so I try to just kind of keep that as a personal sort of thing. So yeah, with Derek Jensen, the trans thing personally for me isn't an issue. Other than that, it is an issue for you, and you're my kid. So that's a thing. But I could see somebody who doesn't have skin in the game in the form of a kid who's a trans kid, kind of going, all right, I want to go hear what he has to say about the environment. And I don't think there's a way to write down a rule of thumb for that. I think we have to kind of dance each song. No,
I think that makes a lot of sense. And I guess the two things that I heard from one from you and one from Jessica. So Jessica, I can imagine that there are people who have programs on this radio station who could say, you said the Constitution is an evolving document. That means you hate America and our founding fathers.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, right?
Heard it here
Okay,
first.
how did they friggin' come to that conclusion?
Because the Constitution is the Constitution. It was written by the greatest people on the face of the earth.
And it's not to be reinterpreted.
And it is not to be interpreted. The only thing that you're supposed to interpret is what they meant by those words. Right?
Okay.
I don't agree with that. I'm just saying.
No, but that's a legitimate divide in discourse.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's a divide on the Supreme Court too.
Yeah. Which is funny, but yeah.
and then the other thing is that, when Paul's talking about the Constitution and all of the great stuff in it, they've been very specific people.
What do you mean? They've been
when they were talking about all of these lofty goals about freedom and all of that, they were talking about a very small specific group of people who should have those. They didn't think that Jessica should be able to vote.
Oh, the writers of the
the writers of the Constitution. They didn't think that black people should have free speech or any of those kinds of things. They were talking about themselves. They should have all of these rights and no one else should have them. And, that they would do whatever they needed to do to ensure that they kept theirs and other people didn't have theirs.
But that was we're talking about the 18th century. Are we going to apply 18th century ideals to a world that's like...
Not unless we're willing to dress that way again. But no, I'm sorry. I just...
All right, high heels and wigs.
Pantaloons. High heels and wigs, and that's my get up. No. So
get my powdered wig for me.
Well, see, I think that's the brilliance of what the Constitution stands for, and again, I'm taking a side on that divide, but is that they realize that even in the stipulations, like what they agreed to put off any sort of meaningful debate about slavery for a certain number of years, right? So they were aware things are going to change. And this document may seem kind of old and fusty someday, and so we need to make, and then of course in the early 19th century you get Marshall and all the people who set up judicial review and blah, 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 we're off to the races. So they recognize that you got to dance every song. They recognize that you have to change and you have to reevaluate, and that ideas and problems will evolve and change and become more complex as time goes on.
And they wrote into the Constitution a process for changing the Constitution too, so they knew it was going to change.
There you go. Yeah, exactly.
So I guess the part I want to try to get back to is this sort of, I mean, on the one hand, I really enjoyed the whole free-for-all of ideas. I think that makes a lot of sense. And then at the same time, I see a lot of the damage that it causes every day in the lives of real human beings. And I mean, I don't pretend to have the answer to that. And, you know, I don't think any of us sitting in the room would pretend to have the answer to that.
I don't think we need to have the answer to it.
Or even a answer to it.
I think we can work out a answer to it.
Yeah, okay. I'd be interested to hear what a answer is.
For me at KFUG, for guidelines going forward, I have to fall back on this, I guess it's sort of an amorphous idea, but if you are walking, even if it's irresponsible what you're saying, if you are trying to shut somebody else down, to dehumanize somebody else, then no. But you can say, and again, this opens up all kinds of, I understand this. This is not a hard and fast thing. I'm just trying to define the dance floor for the dance that will have to happen every time somebody says something irresponsible on KFUG. And that is if you're walking around telling other people no, telling other people to shut up, then no, I don't want you on the air. If you're walking around and you're saying things like Sandy Hook didn't happen or that Muslims are worse people than other people because they're Muslims, I can't tell you to shut up. I'm not comfortable doing that. I'm comfortable coming on the air and talking with you about it. I'm comfortable debating that idea with you, and you certainly need to be receptive to the idea that somebody in this community can call you on that. But I'm not. I don't want to shut people off and shut people down, because ultimately what I come back to is I have to justify these things that I'm going to set up as outside rules, these SOPs, but really they're just me. And I'm not comfortable trying to project that out on everybody else. So other than this base sort of, if your message is no, then no. You don't get to share that message over Cape. That is just kind of the basic thing. And if it is stupid stuff like Sandy Hook was a false flag and Muslims are, those ideas, I believe, have to stand or fall on their own merits. Excuse me. I almost vapor locked my skull just now. And I had a great idea too. So it's not. Okay, go on. I've got to get back.
Well, that's okay. We've got time to roll back around. So Jessica, let me ask you this, and once again, you know, I don't pretend to have, you know, I'm just asking a question. So basically, you.
I remember. I'm sorry. That was like I went like that.
That's okay. Do you want?
I do.
Please go ahead.
So. The idea of ideas standing or falling on their own merit. That sort of libertarian thing, the ideas being out there. I think that if I go, and this is part of the whole SOP problem that I have with it, if I go and I lay down, all right, I was looking the other day at Facebook, I blocked somebody, right? Just cause. And I saw a list of all the people I blocked. You know, it's about 15, 20 people that I've blocked over the years. And I'm looking at them going, yeah, there's a list of everybody I blocked, all these people. Okay. If we shut down, and that got me thinking, if we shut down ideas, specific ideas, I really believe that gives more power to those ideas. And just as you were saying, if that sunlight, daylight is the best disinfectant, I think that these ideas, if they're not countervening that very specific rule about, and also very amorphous rule about not being a negative, not saying no to somebody else's expression, they have to be aired and they have to stand or fall, because if we hide them away, they billow up, they become monsters in the dark, and we have to keep pulling them out. And I don't think that by pulling them out we run the risk of becoming sort of callous to them and just accepting them. I think that initial response, you've got to react to them, you've got to dance with them, but you can't hide. If you start saying that idea is verboten, then those ideas are going to become more powerful just because you did that. That's what I wanted to get to say. That's one reason why. That's how I can justify at least stupid things being said on, irresponsible even things being said on KFUG. Because if people are going to say those, then let's say them, let's react to them, let's treat them with the way they're supposed to be treated, as opposed to just hidden away and told no.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense, and it got me thinking about, did I have the head of the Aryan nations on? Yes, I had the head of the Aryan nations on. I would not have just simply said, here, Pastor Richard Butler, you sit down, say whatever you're going to say. I'll be back in 2 hours.
Yeah.
Or, so there's either, whether it's me as the host or whether it's me as having someone else on who's going to ensure that the counter argument is put forth so people at least have something to be able to analyze, so they can make a judgment about that. So I agree with that. And I guess, Jessica, the question I want to ask you, and I really haven't fully formulated it. So you're sort of, your profession, your stock in trade is sort of like taking often very complicated things, putting it together in a package that is understandable, and when that package is delivered, people are then able to take that, evaluate it, try to use it to make sense of their world and make decisions that affect their lives. That's what your goal is, right? Yeah. So on the one hand, you've got that. And it's existing in this hurricane of insanity and conspiracy theories and all of this stuff. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Your thoughts about that?
It is what it is. I don't know.
And there you go. You could have just said yes. No. I had an interview like that once. I would ask a question and I'd get yes.
Yes.
No. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Avi had an interview like that. Yeah.
Oh, isn't it? It's the worst.
Dinner.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Those are difficult. Those are like.
And I'm sorry, Jessica. And it is what it is, But I'm going to go on the basis you've had a little bit more thought about it than that, or maybe not.
What was the question again?
You could work for the Trump administration. No.
Right.
No. I know.
Don't even.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I meant that in. I'm sorry. It was a joke, a bad joke. No. The question is, you're trying to do this really important thing, and you are doing this really important thing, and it's almost in the middle of this hurricane of razor blades, basically.
I think I don't focus so much on what other people are doing. I don't focus so much on the razor blades as what I'm doing. Unless somebody, they take what I've read that it forms the basis of an opinion or an action or what have you, and they either really didn't read what I wrote, they heard it second or third hand, or they read what I wrote and didn't understand it or didn't understand it. And that's kind of frustrating. But again, I don't really feel like I should do anything about that. I think at some point, unless I get something factually wrong, somebody can point that out and can tell me that I am wrong and show me that I'm wrong. Then I think at some point it's out of my hands.
Yeah, no. I hear what you're saying, and once again, this may only make sense to me. I guess what I'm really asking is, to the degree I know you, I know you. To the degree I know your work, I know your work. I have tremendous respect for both things. And so it's not a matter so much, my question isn't so much about what you're doing, or it's that what you're trying to do, what you're doing and what you're dedicated to in this universe of other stuff that can, through its activity and lack of truth and twisting and all of that stuff, make it even more difficult for people who are trying to do journalism like you're doing it to be able to do it and to have it be as successful as it could, because all the rest of this stuff is muddying everything up so bad that at some point it gets challenging to trust anything
Well, I
Does,
think
does that make sense?
yeah, absolutely. And I think at some point it's beyond challenging. It's dangerous. I mean, you guys mentioned Pizzagate. That could have had really disastrous consequences for the people at that pizza parlor. I mean, I go back to the terms fake news and enemies of the people, the Capital Gazette in Maryland. I mean, you had somebody go in there with a gun into the newsroom and kill people. And that's, I guess that's the world. I guess that's the informational world in which we live. I mean, information is used as a weapon sometimes, and sometimes it's not even information. Sometimes it's just out and out lies. And and sometimes I get freaked out by that, but then I just, I got a job to do.
Right. Yeah.
And again, I'm surrounded. It's hard to do it because I feel like sometimes my voice is getting drowned out, or not really my voice, but the voice of others are getting drowned out, and I can't do anything about it. Wow. Or if I can, I don't really know what to do. So. Like I said, it is what it is.
Yeah, no, I hear that, and I guess
And I don't know if it's up to me to do anything about it.
But you are doing your part about it,
Yeah.
Because you're suiting up and you're showing up and you're continuing to do the quality journalism that you do, and nothing any of us are going to do is going to fix the big thing,
Right?
All we can
Right.
do is keep our side of the street clean and
Keep on keeping on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Avi, I'd like to ask you a couple of different things.
Hang in there, baby. I'm just throwing in other ones like that. Yeah. Keep on keeping on.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. So a couple of different things. One is
Crystal Light.
trying to move from childhood to adulthood in this environment that we've been talking about for the last couple of hours. And then also because some of this was very specific to you. We're talking about, Derek Jensen and, like for me, I'm an old straight white guy. When a lot of these issues come up, it's really easy for me to do 50,000 feet and philosophize because I'm not directly affected by it. But a lot of the stuff that goes on, particularly when we're talking about what some people would call free speech and what some other people might experience as hate speech, some of that is directly aimed at you, or else it legitimately feels that way, right?
Yeah, and I would say, I don't know, it's again, it's hard to balance. Yeah, like free speech versus hate speech, and when does it become hate speech, and to who decides if it's hate speech or not. And yeah, it's the Derek Jensen thing kind of got to me, and I felt weird about other people not like feeling the same kind of, well, this is messed up. Mm-hmm. This is a very messed up thing, and I think it was weird. It was weird to me that other people weren't as angry. Because, again, yeah, it's a very personal thing to me.
Was it weird to you that I wasn't as angry?
Yes.
Really?
And it's weird to me that you're not as angry about it.
I don't know about it. I don't know what the
and I guess,
the issue is. Also, and this is a thing that we've talked about a lot, actually, and this thing comes up again. How responsible are you for Eric's words? Or for Derek's words, how much of a threat really is that to you?
And yeah, that is a good point. the things he was specifically saying do not relate to specifically my identity. I'm not a trans woman, so that doesn't relate exactly to me. But as a member of the trans community and as someone who wants to stand up for trans women who are ridiculously attacked by a lot of people, I think it's important. And if these kind of trans exclusionary radical feminist views, it mostly focuses on excluding trans women, but it also includes looking down on trans men because they're just confused women, air quotes. I think that, and maybe this is my interpretation of his beliefs, but if he holds that view against trans women, he probably also holds that view against trans men, and that's also my kind of, that might be my interpretation of it.
Avi, can I ask you a question and
For sure.
answer or not? Obviously your choice. My guess is, I mean, that this isn't the first time that you've heard something like that.
Oh, no.
Why did this get you more angry?
Hey, Sean, hold on, man.
Why you said this really got to you? Why did it get to you more? Why did this get to you so much?
I think mostly because most of the kind of transphobia that I see around here is pretty basic transphobia, which is just your basic transphobe, which is basically just kind of ignorance and trans people aren't real, blah, 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 which you get from kind of a rural conservative town, which you shouldn't have to put up with, but you do. So this, I think what got me about this was this, he's calling himself a feminist. Which usually when you hear, oh, you're a feminist, oh, isn't that great? Oh, you stand up for women, amazing. But then
he's excluding women.
He's excluding women from women's spaces. And I think what got to me about it was he's calling himself a feminist. And usually when I hear someone in this specific community say, oh, they're feminist, isn't that great? Oh, good. And you're not a bigot, as a lot of people in this town who don't consider themselves feminists are. But the fact that he's excluding that really got to me, that he's calling himself a feminist when he really is excluding women, and or he thinks that he needs to protect women from trans women, because that's one of the views that he expressed on Facebook, was that he's protecting women from transgender women, which is that gets me.
Well, let me ask you this, okay? And was it the sophistication of it that got you?
Yes.
Because you find that more dangerous?
Yes, exactly. So it's not just trans people aren't real, as you get a lot around here. It was that it came from not quote unquote logical kind of, more sophisticated kind of argument. And it's a more sophisticated argument than just basic transphobia. It's wrapped up with turf rhetoric and all this. And it has a community, which is terrifying. The trans exclusionary radical feminists have a community that they broadcast all of their views from. So it was the sophistication and the kind of network that kind of ideology has that kind of scared me. Like, oh, wow, okay, there are people that... And a lot of the turf rhetoric that I see is mainly online. Like, oh, I'll see this post. Oh, that sucks. Wow. But this was in my town and in relation to people that I knew, and it got to me a little bit. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Sorry, yeah.
So we're just about at the end of the program, 12:57 on this Monday. Final thoughts, and maybe what we could do is go to Jessica first. That's good. I'll tell you. Yeah.
Same as it ever was.
Right?
Same as it ever was. Abandon all hope, you enter here. And then when you abandon your hope, I will write a great story.
Hey, I like that. I'll quote Dante. Why not?
I love that. That'd be a great headline. Locals abandon hope. I don't know. I have no idea. I think we just keep doing the dance. I'm not down for strictures, and I'm not down for writing down restrictions. I need to kind of face every day and every problem, every issue, every expression in its own context, and go from there. But if you're spouting hate and divisiveness, and mostly just telling other people to shut up and that their message doesn't have any sort of legitimacy, then your voice doesn't belong on KFUG. That's not what we're about.
Yeah, That's a good one. I'm going to go with one that my first AA sponsor taught me like 35 plus years ago. And, I wanted to argue about everything, right? Including I wanted to argue about the nature of God, And he said to me, Mike, he said, the only thing you need to know about God is you ain't it.
Very good.
And I went, okay.
All right, got
I
it.
could cope with that. And the other one he taught me was, he says, every time you're pointing your finger at somebody,
you got
the
that.
other three are pointing back at you.
Yeah, I always love
And,
that.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Somebody told me that in college. I'm like, oh my god.
It's deep.
Yeah,
what I
right.
mean? And
How
think
profound is
they probably learned it from some quasi burned out drunk.
Yeah, you're right.
Hey, listen, this has been Public Process.
You got last thoughts?
Oh, last thoughts. I'm
No, I
sorry.
kind of went off on my last thought, so
okay.
I'm good. Thank you for
Thank you for co-producing the show.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. I need all the help I could get. Hey, listen, this has been Public Process. It has been my pleasure to be here with Paul Critz of KFUG, Jessica Cejnar of Wild Rivers Outpost, Avi Critz of KFUG's Youth News Team. I'm Mike Thornton, Public Process, and it's going to be my last show for a little while because I am going out on a sojourn. And maybe we'll talk a little bit more about that tomorrow morning on Full Logic Reverse when you tune in at 6 a.m. Stay tuned to KFUG Crescent City. More stuff after this.